Disney loves to tell us their movies are built around moral lessons. A little courage, a little friendship, the circle of life, you know the drill. But the thing is, to keep those lessons neat and clean, Disney's been quietly reshaping stories in ways that erase entire characters. And not just background extras, I mean full-on family members, heirs to the throne, rulers of the Pride Lands, gone like they never even existed. The Lion King is probably the biggest example of this. On the surface, it looks like a simple tale of loss, redemption, and destiny. But if you look at the drafts, the books, and the side media that got buried along the way, you'll realize the Pride Lands used to be a whole lot messier. Forgotten queens, missing heirs, erased childhood friends, even characters that would have flipped Scar's reputation on its head. Before Mufasa stood tall as the perfect king, and before Scar plotted in the shadows, there was someone else on the throne, Uru, their mother. According to the semi-canon books The Lion King, 6 New Adventures, Uru was queen of the Pride Lands and wife to King Ahadi. She wasn't filler lore either. She was described as wise, protective, and always trying to keep the peace between her sons. Basically, the exact kind of figure whose presence would make Scar's fall from grace way more complicated. And maybe that's why Disney never brought her up in the films. If Uru existed on screen, it would beg the question, was Scar truly evil, or was he a son who grew up neglected by a mother who clearly had a favorite? Let me know in the comments. By erasing Uru, Disney erased a lot of sympathy that might have shifted how we see Scar's story. But Uru's not the only one missing. Ahadi, her husband and the father of both Mufasa and Scar, was also left out. In extended lore, Ahadi's portrayal is a bit inconsistent. Some descriptions say he looked like Mufasa with a golden mane. Others say he resembled Scar. And that tiny detail sparks a massive theory. Maybe he treated Mufasa as the golden child, literally, while Scar, or Taka as he was first known, was pushed aside. That's the kind of parental favoritism that could explain years of resentment boiling under Scar's skin. Yet, in the official canon, Ahadi doesn't exist. Disney cut him clean out, leaving Scar's bitterness chalked up to jealousy instead of a history of being overlooked. And the royal erasures didn't stop there. After Simba claimed the throne, the plan was originally to continue the line with a son, Kopa. He was adventurous, brave, and carried all the traits of young Simba, right down to looking just like him. But when The Lion King 2, Simba's pride was made, Kopa was suddenly gone, replaced by Kiara with no explanation. To this day, fans debate what happened. One theory suggests that Zira killed Kopa, which would explain why Simba is so paranoid and overprotective in the sequel. But Disney never acknowledged it, probably because the idea of showing a child heir murdered was way too dark for a direct-to-video family movie. Instead, Kiara became the heir, and Kopa was scrubbed from history. And finally, there's Nuka. He's actually in Simba's pride, but his parentage has always been left suspiciously vague. His scruffy mane, his green eyes, the way he talks, all of it screams Scar's son. Yet Disney has never confirmed it. And why? Because admitting Nuka was Scar's biological child would throw the entire royal lineage into chaos. If Nuka were the true heir, then Kovu being handpicked by Zira would feel like a betrayal of Scar's actual bloodline. Instead, Nuka was left as a tragic side character desperate for his mother's approval, dying unloved and unrecognized. If you thought Disney forgetting Kopa was bad, wait until you meet Mitu, or rather, don't meet him, because he never made it past the concept stage. Mitu was originally written as Nala's younger brother, a curious cub who looked up to Simba and tagged along on adventures. In early drafts, he was supposed to be the kind of character who added both comic relief and emotional weight. Basically, the little sibling who reminds everyone that these lions are still a family, not just rulers in training. But Disney erased him completely. Just gone. Why? Because keeping him around would have complicated Nala's role and shifted the spotlight away from Simba's journey. In other words, the studio streamlined things by quietly removing an entire bloodline. And speaking of relationships that never made it to the big screen, Simba was originally supposed to have more than just Nala by his side during cubhood. Kula and Chumvi, 2 friends who appeared in the Lion King's tie-in books but never got their moment in the spotlight. Kula was the playful, adventurous type, while Chumvi leaned into that reckless daredevil energy. Together, they made Simba's early life feel bigger, showing that the Pride Lands weren't just about royal duties, but also about simple childhood bonds. Of course, the movie decided to cut them, probably to keep the story tight and avoid juggling too many characters, which works for pacing, sure, but it also leaves Simba's world feeling smaller. On screen, it looks like he went straight from one friend, Nala, to another, Timon and Pumbaa, with nothing in between. If Kula and Chumvi had stayed, his childhood would have felt more grounded, and his eventual loss under Scar would have carried even more weight. And that brings us to Nee, easily the most mysterious of the erased characters. Unlike the others, Nee wasn't part of Simba's circle at all. He came from the outside, introduced in one of Disney's official Lion King storybooks as a rogue lion who stepped in to protect Nala when she was young. What made Nee different is that he wasn't tied to the throne or royal bloodlines. He was simply an outsider who chose to help without any expectation of power or reward. In a story so focused on kingship and legacy, Nee would have been proof that loyalty and courage can come from places far beyond the Pride Lands. But like the others, he was quietly left behind in the shadows of the expanded universe. And that's a shame, because Nee could have added real depth to Nala's character, showing her that alliances don't always follow bloodlines. And that strength can come from lions who exist outside the circle of life's hierarchy. From there, we move to one of the most underrated almost heroes of The Lion King, Bati, the bat-eared fox. She was introduced as a clever little fox who played with Nala, Simba, and the gang during their cub days. In fact, early drafts even had her helping Nala sneak into the elephant graveyard, proving she wasn't just comic relief, but a real ally. Imagine the dynamic of a sly fox outsmarting hyenas. It would have given the kids' adventures more brains than brawn. Instead, Bati was quietly dropped, and her clever energy never made it past the early sketches. And Bati wasn't the only one. Disney also planned Dabi, an aardvark with a quirky charm. She was designed to be part of Simba and Nala's childhood crew, a sort of quirky sidekick who added variety to the mix. Dabi's whole vibe was supposed to be awkward but endearing. Dabi represented the idea that even the oddballs belonged in the Pride Lands. Of course, Disney decided to tighten the cast, and the poor aardvark was erased. Then there was Hair Rhino, who would have been something completely different. Unlike the cub friends, Hair Rhino was conceived as a full-on ally to the lions, a massive protector figure who could have added both muscle and humor to the story. Early concepts even hinted that he could have been part of a comedic duo, balancing his tough appearance with a more lighthearted personality. Instead, Hair Rhino was scrapped entirely, leaving the lions to fend for themselves without any big guy muscle outside their own kind. Imagine how different the battle against Scar's hyenas might have looked with a charging rhino on the field. The hyenas themselves had scrapped additions too, and that's where things get really interesting. One of them was Basho, a hyena who wasn't painted as purely cruel. He was more complicated, less a cackling villain and more a survivor who didn't always agree with Scar's extremes. If he had stayed, Scar's army might have shown shades of moral gray instead of just being comic henchmen, but Basho was cut, leaving us with only Shenzi, Banzai, and Ed to carry the hyena banner. And Basho wasn't alone. Banagi, the hyena prince. Yes, a prince. His character would have changed the hyenas entirely, giving them their own royal hierarchy and a rival to Simba who actually had birthright claims of his own. Suddenly, the hyenas wouldn't just be Scar's pawns. Banagi's inclusion could have completely changed how we viewed the hyenas, shifting them from comic villains into a real society with leadership, family, and politics. If you're still awake after that, show me some love with a like, otherwise I'll assume you fell asleep. And there you have it. Now don't make me beg, just subscribe and save us both the awkwardness. See you in the next one.